All right, Fred, thank
Get
you
it
for your
started.
time today, sir. Yeah. So,
Right.
look, to kick things off, tell our listeners, who are you? Where are you from? What's your background in your career? What are you doing now?
Right. Okay. So I'm Fred, and my current profession is a technical engineer or solutions engineer, whatever you call it these days. Uh, Think about it this way. I've always envisioned myself as the bridge between the technical folks and the business folks who don't always see eye to eye. And sometimes you need somebody to interpret things for them before they actually understand what they're getting into,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that sort of thing didn't happen overnight for me. I have, oh geez, about 18 years of experience now. I started out as a technical support engineer in the weeds, in the nitty gritty, doing technical stuff. Now I still do, but it's a bit more business focused, if you so put it.
Yeah.
And for everyone's information, Vlad and I have been colleagues for years. We've worked together in this company, who shall not be named in this podcast. But yeah, uh, Vlad will have an idea of what I'm talking about here because we are kind of in our current role. We kind of explain the high highly technical concepts and try to condense it into ways that any lay people will understand.
Yeah. Not an easy task, which I think most of our listeners and people who would be talking to us as well feel as well, right? That essentially being a translator, right, for deep technical concepts to something a lot more simple.
Mhm.
Very difficult.
I feel like I might have overstepped your introduction there, mate, but go ahead.
Not at all,
Tell them
mate.
a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, like you, I've been around probably for a little bit less, maybe 10, 12 years. I've been service desk, network engineer. I've been MSP doing servers, hosted solutions, and now I'm like you in a more of a technical sales based role where we do a lot of the translation, the designing, all of these other things, talking with people to, help them in a sense, right? It's like you got to sort your thoughts, right? What am I doing? How am I going to go about it? What's the actual purpose of it? And I think that really rolls really well into sort of our next topic, which was really like, what is the main objective for this
What are we
podcast?
doing
And
here?
yeah,
What
exactly.
are we
So,
doing
Fred,
here, mate?
take it away, my friend. Tell
No,
us,
look,
what are we doing here?
I've had this idea for a while now. Look, part of my long-spanning career, and I'm starting to show my age talking about this, but uh, I've had a bit of an experience teaching in academics. Uh, don't think of me as the professor nerd. Well, I am a nerd, but I haven't really quite worn the professor title very well. But I've taught in academy for a few years, and one thing I've picked up is I there is a need for people who can explain complex, not complicated, complex ideas and make them understandable to, say, a 5-year old or an 8-year old. I
Mm,
start. It used to be, isn't it that the analogy used to be explain it to me like I'm a 5-year old? But what I realized having a 4-year old myself, now you cannot explain the stuff of network technologies to 5-year old. They're probably not going to listen to you.
no.
But you get the idea, right?
Yeah. It's all about that limited time span of concentration, right? And how do you
Correct.
keep me interested enough, just long enough to consume that idea.
Yeah.
Um, I love that. I that very well resonates with me as well in terms of what we're trying to do here.
Exactly.
Um,
And as well
and
as you
we
will, yeah, sorry,
yeah,
I was saying, as you well know, IT is an ever evolving industry. There's always something new coming out almost on a daily basis. So for newcomers, it's always going to be daunting and intimidating for them to, okay, where do I focus? How do I keep up? How do I learn what I need to learn? Where do I pick them up? So I think that's kind of the main objectives that why we're doing this is so that there's something that they can always come back to. Like I'm using this as an illustration point, but what if somebody suddenly gets interested in frame relay? Nobody uses frame relay nowadays. It's the time of
You were
this
reading my
recording,
mind.
right? But what if they do? And I'm not suggesting that we're covering that in our future episodes, but yeah,
Yeah.
you get the drift.
Yeah, oh, mate, when you started talking about we saying 12 and 18 years, I'm thinking, man, I remember when I first did the CCNA and I'm like, oh wow, I'm learning about frame relay, thinking I might actually use it. No.
No,
I mean, of course, there were still places using it, right? It still was valid back then. But it's definitely changed and gone out the way right now. Everything's Ethernet,
oh
Ethernet,
for
Ethernet.
sure, yeah, Ethernet.
Um, Look, I think that's an entire podcast in itself, just for you and I to spend some time
All night,
reminiscing
yes,
on,
absolutely.
on technologies gone by. Um, no, that's good. I think to add as well to why we're really doing this too. Like you say, it's about trying to approach IT with a different mindset. We want to think about new ways of doing things. We kind of want to cover the old and how we're doing it with the new. We also want to make sure that we're covering why. So when you're covering a technology, it's well, why do I actually want to use this? What's the purpose of this? Is it, to help improve the experience of my employees, accessing a specific service, trying to make, getting onto the Wi-Fi easier? Is it to make it more secure? Because, perhaps we attract a lot of attention from hackers, right? There's
Mm.
so much to think about there. And then diving into the topic of technical debt, that's something I know most engineers wish they didn't have to deal with, but is still a problem that people face, right? I mean, not every
Correct.
network is a
Yeah.
snowflake anymore, you know, but still there are situations and circumstances that people, get trapped into sort of tight spots, right?
Yeah.
So,
And look, as of the time of this recording, people have to people may have already realized that the world is moving into an existence where, and this is the first look, 10 minutes into this conversation, and I've already brought up AI. But think of it this way. There's very little, there's very little things, there's very few things nowadays that AI can't do. And that worries people. But think about it for a second. AI can do these advanced things, very focused, highly technical stuff. But you, as the human, you still have the cognitive intelligence to understand situations and interpret it in such a way that a machine couldn't. And it helps that you understand fundamentally what a technology is about. Because, look, machines are prone to hallucinations, machines are prone to error, and not because there's something wrong with the machine, but there's still challenges in development that can't make machines quite as human as we want it to be. So
yeah.
you being the human must be the smarter person in the room. Still need to understand technology. You still need to know what's going on. You just let the machine do the heavy lifting and let them do what they're good at.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking, really, some people talk it up in such a way that it's like reducing the human cognitive essence down to a single algorithm. And you're like, no. I think you and I have done, a lot of investigation on AI lately as well, how to train one too. I mean, to spend 24 hours training an AI to detect just one thing when humans are actively detecting thousands of learned things over, 5, 10, 15, 30 years,
That's it,
it's a
right?
whole other scale, right? It's a whole other scale, right? And a lot of these vendors have done great to extrapolate a lot of that for us. But like you say, you still need to know how all of this runs underneath because when it hits the fan, that's it, right? If you can't troubleshoot it because you don't have the relevant skill, it becomes a problem. So
Correct.
yeah,
And I'm going to
love
make a
that take on that.
controversial statement. I don't know how this will age over time,
First
but
podcast, here we go.
to people to people who are listening, and call me 10, 12 years down the line, let me know if I made a mistake with this statement. But until such time that an AI has figured out to grow a frontal lobe. You don't need to worry about AI taking over your jobs. You
Yep.
don't need to worry about it. You just need to know how to leverage it properly.
100%, 100%. That's also another topic for the future that we need to table down.
Yes, yes.
Um, and speaking of topics, I guess, right? Probably, I guess, why we should cover exactly why we chose the name for this podcast as well, right? Why did we choose Packet Party?
Yes,
Well,
why Packet Party? Now, Vlad, this is your story to tell. You're the brains behind that naming.
it's funny, we were just talking literally about AI for a moment there, and I think one of my strong suits is not one of my strong suits is not coming up with titles, names for songs, names, titles for PowerPoint presentations, titles for, things that change between PowerPoint presentations or sections of a Word document. Like, no.
Mm.
So that's where we leveraged, GPT to obviously have some fun, come up with, hundreds of different names for us. And ultimately we landed on Packet Party. The PP, the alliteration makes it a little catchy, but it also drops kind of the seriousness out of the topic, right? Like we IT people, we can sometimes get a little bit heated in terms of our choice of vendor or product or solution, how we want to do things, right? And it's like, let's
Yeah.
just have some fun with it. Let's just talk about technology, try to love technology for what it is, right? And so, just like, beers with Talos, right? It's all just
Oh
about
yeah,
having
shout
a
out
little
to
bit
you
of fun.
guys. We look forward to making an episode with you in the future. Keep an eye out for it. I'm calling it as early as now.
One day you and I will also do this with maybe a beer in hand when we can get on a late night set.
Sure.
So that now rolls into like format and consumption. So I mean, primarily you're hearing this via audio for now, but long term the idea is that we want to be able to chop and change some bits and pieces from the video, potentially
Mm.
upload them to YouTube. That way, for people with sort of different consumption habits, right? If you can sit through half an hour on an audio podcast, maybe for the drive into work, great.
Great.
Fred and I do a lot of that. But if you have a little less time or you prefer video format, seeing our ugly mugs, no worries. We will eventually get to uploading some of these snippets up onto that
We're gonna
platform,
put a filter in
YouTube.
front of our
So
faces just to keep our anonymity intact.
like this.
Uh,
And we'll probably use AI to actually put that in there, right? Because it's a hell of a lot better than me clicking around
yeah.
through a video editor. Um,
Look, Vlad, there's kind of a method behind that reasoning because I personally feel like even though somebody of my age should have a bit more attention or focus into whatever I'm doing, I still find that consuming knowledge can sometimes become cumbersome. And if I have 10 minutes of free time where I can distract myself with something, I
yep.
would want it to be something useful and will help progress my technical skills to some degree, right? And I think that's kind of what we were discussing then. I mean, we could record a whole episode, 40 minutes, an hour long. Not everyone has the time to do it. And maybe they do, but then later on they come back and say, "Oh, I've heard about this concept in this episode, but I don't have the time to scrub through the whole thing just to find that bit."
Yep. Yep. No, I definitely feel for that. And I mean, taking off our current employer's hat for the moment, right? If you are a person that runs IT for a business, right, you have so many different vendors with so many different technologies, with so many different things to think about, right? And trying to have some sort of, relatively unbiased material that you can think about, look at, listen to, something that either summarizes the topic for you or summarizes news, etc. All the better for you, right? And the shorter that content is, the better. Fingers crossed, though, that Google's,
Yes.
AI podcast thing never puts us out of business. This
Oh
is
man. I'm not too worried about that. Like even if they can emulate some sort of humor, which by the way is something that is inherent to Vlad and myself. you should hear us offline and how we kind of banter and talk shit about stuff. But that's beside the point. I don't think that any level of AI can put that human feeling humor. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's a kind of the intention. We're mindful of the fact that technology in itself is already too serious. Why can't we make it light and entertaining for our listeners, and at the same time make it educational for them?
100%. 100%. And talking about education now, this goes into the next section, which is, I mean, what sort of topics are we wanting to cover as part of this format going forward? I mean, this is our origin story that we're discussing here right now,
Oh,
but
yes, yes.
yeah, for the future, tell our friends, Fred, what are we looking to do potentially?
Look, one of the things that I've always, and uh, we've covered this briefly in our introduction, that we are the guys who try and explain complex technical concepts to people who are buying it, to business owners who are buying it. Now, to the budding engineer who's early in career, you might not fully grasp the reasoning behind why that is. And I think one of the early things that I've learned is that sure, technology always progresses, but what's the driver behind technology? What's the driver behind the scientific and technological advancements? Is it because are we progressing technology for technology's sake, or is it driven by something else? And what one of those things that I learned early on is that needs will drive technology, and those needs will be and help me out with this, framing this properly, right? The need for something will spark kind of a business concept, and it's
Yeah,
that business need that will drive technological innovations or advancement,
yep,
not the other way around. There are a handful of things like the disruptors with the like of Apple and Google who created the technology and disrupted the market.
yep.
But as of this conversation, there's only ever one Google, ever one Apple, and one Amazon, and it's they're more the exception rather than the rule.
That's a great way to put it. You definitely put the shiny one out there. I was thinking something more jaded, like capitalism drives innovation, and therefore businesses competing, right? We will introduce technology in new ways of trying to go to market to speed up either how much money we can make or how much money we can save and not spend to achieve something. But we don't want to go too jaded on the first
Yeah,
episode, right? I'll
let's
leave that
not
right there.
ward off our listeners early on.
But I mean, on that note, look, some of the topics we have in mind and already planning things around like, cloud management, the digital employee experience. It's focusing on, you know, sure, you have Wi-Fi, for example, in an office, but what is that doing? It's producing a connectivity to cloud services and things that employees need to get work done. Therefore, how good is that experience? That's something you need to monitor, right? Shadow IT, sensors and IoT, hybrid work. How do you go thinking about that process of, planning to develop technology that's going to be easy to maintain, but kind of still achieves all of your desired business outcomes, right? Around security and, perhaps things that you have to be compliant with too, right? That's a huge topic in itself. So lots to
Hoping
come
to
in the
help
future.
you. Yeah, we're hoping to help you make sense of all the buzzwords that's floating around in IT nowadays. At least that's the intention, right?
100%, 100%. And so, I mean, if you have ideas on things you want to hear about too from us, like don't hesitate to reach out, find us on LinkedIn. We're pretty easy, stand out fairly easily. We'll try to include links and things wherever we can as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'd love to hear from everyone on that. So
Yeah, as
yeah,
to your point, Vlad, like our strengths lie in infrastructure and a bit of security. Those two things nowadays kind of come hand in hand. And
100%.
that's where we hope to produce a lot more content that will help you, try to break down some of that uh, doubts around, oh, is this technology, did I understand this technology correctly? And, to some degree, we might go a little deep into that technology, but don't worry, we'll hold your hand. We won't let you drown in that pool of technological concept. And
Yeah. I
look,
mean,
too,
at the end of the day,
for
yeah.
every topic that we record, I was hoping that we can get, or at least from our point of view, a guest who is our expert on the
Yeah.
topic, right?
Yep. Yeah, we'll leverage our contacts and sources and people that we know and trust to come in and lend us their opinion, give us a view of the ground as well, which is, I think, really important, right? To stay based in terms of like what is actually happening, what is the real life use cases, and how a certain technology is being consumed, rather than sort of like just pie in the sky theory as well. So that's
Mhm.
really good. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, for sure. And look, we're really excited to do this. We've planned this for what, a few months now, and thank you
At
to our day
least.
jobs. Thank you to our day jobs getting in the way of fun. We now finally are able to put something out. So hopefully we can keep this pace going. And yeah, we'll be promoting the heck out of this very soon.
Yeah, feel free to add us on LinkedIn, so on and so forth. Again, probably a short disclaimer, right? We are pretty blunt, straightforward, and truth, and we are not self-proclaimed experts in this field. So any opinions you hear in here, we are welcome to be challenged as well, right?
Correct.
Your challenges give us more information to learn from, and we can bounce back opinions off of each other, right? And that helps all of us as a community of IT engineers really evolve our opinions and thoughts, right? Rather than being locked into, again, a very specific, serious way of considering
Absolutely.
things, right? It's always good to have a wide opinion, in my
For
mind.
sure.
So,
Yeah, the success of this podcast will rely on your feedback, so we welcome it. I would just encourage you guys to be respectful of us and each other. I think the world could use a bit more of that nowadays. But yeah, like, like
100%.
Vlad said, we're not proclaiming ourselves to be the experts. We do have a fair bit of experience on our belts, and we may know a handful of people who are the real experts in the field. I can think of a few people around the world that I talk to on a regular basis who are the authority in the topic that they are speaking on.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we're blessed with in our current jobs and roles too, right, is that you get to actually speak to a lot of people on the ground that then consume the technology as well, right? And you get to hear their opinions. You get to see how they utilize it, right? And from
Mhm.
there, you get to build a really good picture of, what it is they're doing, what everyone else is doing, right? And sort of how you can actually approach, the topic and the
Yeah,
solutions and the technology, right? Sometimes there are edge cases we can't even fathom to consider, but they exist. They exist for a reason, right? And you can't just sort of disclaim those and say, no, that's not relevant, right? Or you shouldn't have done it like that, right? Because at the end of the day, IT only has so much reach when the business says, yeah, this is how we're doing it. That's how it's done, right? And
that's
then
right.
we
Yeah,
we make our changes to how we do things to sort of accommodate those.
that's
Um,
right.
that's it.
And look, I think this is something that just came to me. But
Hmm.
if you were to put uh, a target audience that this podcast will cater to, who do you reckon would be a good sort of audience that we're focusing at least I know for a fact that we're talking about IT folks, specifically around network engineers, but it doesn't have to be just focused on network engineers alone. Like we have a bit of experience around business concepts that tie back to IT. I would want to say that this is a podcast for engineers by engineers, but we're not pigeonholing ourselves to that because we want
100%.
to make this uh, uh, topic less complicated for people who might not be technical in nature, but need to understand the technology enough to make an informed decision.
100%. It's a great point you raise. When you think that you introduce a technology, right? Yeah, sure, IT has to manage said technology, but the end users spar far and wide, right? You've got HR, salespeople, manufacturing, OT, all of these different departments that exist within a business and utilize all of the capabilities that the IT system delivers, right? And we know that a business cannot survive without IT anymore, but that also means that everyone is IT stakeholder too. And so when we address some topics here like hybrid work or digital employee experience monitoring, that's great for IT from a support perspective, and they understand, how to design their offices and so on and so forth. But then there's the other aspect of this is exactly why we need to get this right. Because if the Wi-Fi is spotty in this area of the office, that's going to be a problem for that sales manager when his salespeople can't, say access Salesforce or some sort of specialized tool, or has a phone call which keeps cutting out, which means he's less effective with customers. Things like that, right?
Mm.
Like there are flow-on effects when technology doesn't work to other departments in a business. And so this podcast will, have some topics relevant to people in lines of business as well to help them sort of be more informed around, why is IT asking me for more budget to do certain things? It's because they want to
Yes.
do it right. And we want to make sure that you understand the reasoning of why they want to do it right.
Yeah,
It's not the same as, having a router in your home network and boom, you've got Wi-Fi. Gets a little bit more complex than that. So
even then, if you're the personal buyer of that router, you'd think about, do I really need this? Do I have the money to pay for it? It's the same thing. It cascades to a bigger scale. And look, I like the idea that you put forward there. Is, for the longest time, businesses have seen IT as a cost center, an expenditure rather than an investment that's critical. I think a lot of that has changed recently, but
yep.
you still have pockets of people who think that IT is just an expenditure and it's a necessary evil of doing business. Well, hopefully we'll try and challenge that notion and give you ideas as to why you should be looking at IT and technology as a whole and see how it can give you a competitive advantage in the market.
Yep. 100%. On that note, my friend, I think we have hit the 27-minute mark of our recording. Do you have any final closing remarks you want to give to our friends listening?
Yeah, Vlad, thank you. I'm really excited about how this podcast will go in the future. This is episode 0, origin stories. And look, sincerity is a quality that Vlad and I share. So we're sincere about this. We do not want to be, you know, well, maybe we do want to be celebrities one day, but the intention really is information sharing, and we
Yeah.
want people to appreciate it for what it is. It's really, we have quite a bit of knowledge that we want to share with the world, and as part of our day jobs, we are kind of required to keep our education going. So as we pick up more, there's more for us to share, and that
Yeah.
hopefully, the world will become a better place because everybody has access to information that they may need. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully our listeners will give us good feedback, throw us ideas, and we'll try and work on it. And if there's any topic that you guys will be interested in, yeah, please let us know. Closing thoughts,
Awesome.
Vlad?
No, that's it. Thank you very much, Fred. And thank you to all of you for listening through this 30 minutes of this first session of ours. Starting from the next session, hopefully we'll start to dive into some content that really starts to address some of what you're looking for. So have a wonderful rest of your day.
Cheers.